M3GAN, or M3GAN as it's called, is directed by Gerald Johnstone and stars Allison Williams, Violet McGraw, and among others. And in this story, it deals with a little girl named Katie, that's played by Violet McGraw, who ends up losing her parents after a tragedy happens. And she ends up getting taken care of by her aunt, that's played by Allison Williams, who is an inventor of different technology and everything that she creates for this company that she works for. And she ends up wanting to cope with her by giving her a life-size doll that can essentially use artificial intelligence to make her very lifelike, and she's called M3GAN. And she uses M3GAN as a way to cope with her while also going into pretty much like, well, if you've seen from the trailers, where she's trying to basically get along with protect Katie and essentially ends up going to the extreme where she goes haywire. And I'll leave it there because there's some other stuff that I can't really get into detail with without really spoiling, but if you pretty much know from the trailers, it kind of spoils a lot of what happens. Now, here's a little backstory. Now, this movie was produced by James Wan, who also came up with the story for it, and I've been an avid fan of James Wan with a lot of his films, and for the most part, it seems like he's been taken into this territory where he's been doing a lot of producing and like coming up with stories for different movies, for different horror movies and stuff. And it seems like when he's not directing films, he ends up handing off either sequels or spin-offs like his Conjuring universe with movies to basically have other directors come in to kind of use like his kind of directing style and use use a lot of what he did with the Conjuring films. And from what I also heard was that this was from the same writer that gave us *Malignant* a couple years ago, and I actually got to really admit that I quite enjoyed that one a lot. That was also directed by James Wan. And with this one, since James Wan didn't direct it, he was trying to hand off duties to another director that did a film that I haven't seen, but I heard it was really good. It was called Housebound from Gerald Johnstone. I haven't seen it, but I heard a lot of good things about it. And so, going into the trailers, that was really what got me curious, and on top of the whole artificial intelligence for the doll, because it seemed like this script or whatever was written around the same time that the Child's Play 2019 remake came out, and both films seem to have that kind of same premise to where you take basically a doll that's essentially going haywire and uses artificial intelligence that goes crazy and stuff. But I think that I was going more into this one with more open-minded, because while that was one of the things I didn't really appreciate in the 2019 remake of Child's Play was the fact that it was basically taking an established property and doing it to where they strayed so far away to what the iconic killer doll Chucky is all about. And so, if it had, I remember really thinking when I watched that movie that it could have probably been used better as a different idea for a better film if it wasn't connected to Child's Play. And seeing that they were doing with this film, I thought maybe they could probably take more advantage with it. After upon seeing the film, I can honestly say that, yeah, there is certain things about this that I think on a writing standpoint had more potential than the Child's Play 2019 remake. But much like with that one, and to certain more faults, it does suffer from a lot of things compared to that film. And also to certain things that do work better to an extent. So, I'll be honest, this was actually one of the most overhyped films I've seen so far of 2023. And the first one being that I've seen so far this year, with it being a new year and all. And so, to get my pros out of the way, I'll say that the two main cast members, Allison Williams and Violet McGraw in this, they really hold their ground and they really carry this movie the best they can. I thought that they were excellent with each other. Allison Williams really pulls a lot of the great stuff that we've seen from her in Get Out and things like that, where she knows how to work with horror films. And so I thought she was great, trying to provide in the performance level as the caring kind of mother, the kind of aunt that you expect in certain scenes. I do have a problem with her character, but that is more of a writing problem than not necessarily her performance. And so, but I thought that the moments that feel genuine with her and Katie, I thought were really well thought and very, heartwarming and emotional at times, the way it plays along in certain scenes. And then the little girl as well, Violet McGraw, I thought she was fantastic in this. She really held her ground with certain emotions in certain scenes, and she also got her started with a movie I saw a few years ago called Dr. Sleep that I thought she was really good in that one too. And so she's really the only one in the film that I can say is the most likable, and to an extent, because I'll get into some other cons later, but it seems to me like the movie kind of struggled with its identity, with what it was trying to do exactly. But to get my other pros out of the way, I will say the M3GAN herself, I think, actually does have potential. That has things that I do enjoy. Like, there's certain things that she says and certain things about her look that I actually do like to an extent. But that is also kind of a hit and miss on certain aspects that I'll have to get into my cons later, to where some of the designs that they have for her and stuff like that, and some of the movements they do in certain parts do feel a little cringe, because they do some like CGI work at times that feels pretty, you know, not rendered properly in my opinion. But for the most part, from what I heard, was that I think they did a good job with blending practical effects in and stuff like that. And so I can say that M3GAN herself, I don't think is as iconic as Chucky is, but she's still fine. She's just nothing to really stick out, because she didn't have all that potential that was there. But to get my other pros, I will say that for the first half of the film, I was actually going into it to see where it was going, because when we're getting into the stuff that deals with Allison Williams' character having to cope with Katie, there is a good moment that I really enjoyed that I thought was going to maybe play out more to what she could do to provide for her as a caring guardian. Especially there's a part where she ends up basically having her going through all of her little inventory of devices that, or equipment that in different things that she's invented and stuff, that I thought was really, you know, heartwarming and unique in certain scenes. But then it kind of gets into some other issues that I had to fall into later with. And one of the other pros I will say too is that I appreciate that they tried to blend in some social commentary in this, where it's essentially trying to have it to say that the company that's doing these, the company that Allison Williams was working for is trying to essentially make life-size dolls and stuff like that for kids to play with, that can pretty much use artificial intelligence to make them even more lifelike. And there's good satire in there that I like, where they have like these fake commercials and stuff that they play into and things like that, and where you see like the dolls, like how they operate with the kids and stuff. And I think there's a lot more of potential that I give a lot of credit for in this film, to see what it did with. And the stuff that they actually say about how the kids are trying to really attach onto life-size type of dolls and stuff, I thought was really unique and very clever. But then other than that though, and there is actually another death scene that I do kind of like that they show, but I can't really go into spoilers, but I thought the aftermath of what happened with it, I thought was pretty good. But other than that, I can honestly say that that's as far as I will go as far as my pros, because while I didn't really necessarily think it was a bad movie, I thought this was definitely a huge misstep in its direction and its potential, that all of everything that they could have established. Where do I start? To get in my first con, I'll have to say that M3GAN herself, I think, really lacks a lot of potential in the fact that she doesn't really do a lot of things that are necessarily, in my opinion, really scary, so to speak, because the way that the movie is kind of going along with, and if it was intentional, I understand, but them trying to essentially make it a very kind of campy type of horror film, I think really missed the mark, because with them trying to blend in some like other satirical stuff in the film, I can understand that part, but it seems like it has a tonal identity where you have certain scenes that M3GAN is trying to kill certain people, and the way that they have her move and stuff like that, especially in that weird cringe dance sequence that I'm sorry, I just did not like, I thought was very off-putting. It was unintentionally hilarious. So, I mean, I should not be laughing at a killer doll like that. I just don't really think that making a killer doll film like this really works in that kind of level. Because, if anything, it should have been the better version of Child's Play 2019 remake. If you were going to go with a more serious, and still blend in some, like, satirical elements that work with that. But instead, they have certain scenes where she's, you know, doing that. And then also that scene where she's, like, in all fours going after that kid, I thought just really looked out of place. And then there's other scenes where there are moments where she can be creepy, where she's like staring at certain people and stuff. And the way that she kills people is my other biggest problem, because when she's actually killing people, they cut away because of the fact that it's PG-13. And that's really missed the mark with it, because when you have a killer doll movie like this, it would have been better to really benefit what you could have done with it. I'm sorry, but this is the same problem I have with Happy Death Day, where if you're trying to make a slasher film, you don't make it PG-13, you make it R-rated. That alienates your audience. Now, I get the studio. It was basically under the impression that people that watched the trailer for it when it came out on TikTok, it was appealing to a lot of younger crowds that were really, I guess, really got a lot of buzz for it, and that's what I heard was the reason why they aimed it to PG-13. And that to me, I think, was just such a big, colossal waste of opportunity, because it's like, why make a killer doll movie if you're not going to do nothing with it? That was the same at least in the other films I've seen with the Child's Play movies, and even to some of the like Puppet Master and things like that, even some of the Annabelle sequels, they at least knew how to appeal to their actual audiences. But in this one, it just seems like, you know, there's so much wasted stuff here that I just find it very generic. That's my other con with the way the movie plays along too, where it's established early on that M3GAN is trying to protect Katie as being, you know, from people that are trying to, you know, hurt her and stuff like that. But the problem I have with this, and maybe if I missed this or whatever, but as it goes along, it seems like she forgot about the writers forgot about doing that with her character, with the doll, because she's basically attacking other people that are more or less just more like criticizing Allison Williams' character and trying to go after her, and it doesn't make any sense. Because, and also, I have a comment with that, because Allison Williams' character, I felt like throughout most of the film, she's a very selfish woman that doesn't really want to have anything to do with Katie. And I know that's a art that they try to present with her and stuff like that. But that's the problem I also have, is that they don't really give her a redemption that I really bought. It really felt unearned the way it was going along. On top of that, it seems to me like the way that it goes along with the plot, with her essentially going haywire and stuff, it almost seems like there were scenes that were missing that could have really built up to that more. And maybe it was something I was going over my head or things like that or something, but I felt like the way that it turned into a generic artificial intelligence essentially going after people and stuff was something that I've already seen in countless other films that did it better. But I mean, there's more I can go into detail, but that's pretty much the bare basics of it that I really found with the movie, is that it's kind of more forgettable and really more of just a blah kind of movie for me. Like, I don't hate it by any means, and I don't really love it either. It just kind of falls more in the middle. But with a lot of the problems I had that really kind of hindered it back with it, this is, to me, going to be one of the most overhyped movies that I've seen so far of 2023, since we've started the year out. And so with that being said, I'm going to give M3GAN, or M3GAN, a low average Joe on the Film Phreeks meter. So for those of you who have also seen M3GAN, let me know in the comments below what you thought about it, and thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next review. I'll see you later.